I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Hampton Town Trustees for April 24th, 2023. And I'd like to open with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Arlene, can you do roll call, please?
Yes, sir. John Alford.
Here.
Francis Bach.
Here.
David Cataletto.
Here.
Ben Dollinger.
Here.
Jim Garneau.
Here.
Jim Grimes.
Yes.
Susan McGraw-Keever. Mike Martinson. And Bill Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll go with public comment. Matt, is there anybody on the phones? Okay, thank you. All right.
I think it starts the second.
Hey, I'm sorry, I can't read your name, Cynthia.
Cynthia Diaker.
Okay, would you like to come to this podium? Please just introduce yourself from that.
My name is Cynthia Diaker and I'm a resident on Middle Highway. I apologize for reading my notes, but I'm quite nervous. And I think after I present my purpose, you'll probably understand why. I wrote to you in 2014 about this and my issues were dismissed, basically. I've had a home in East Hampton my entire life and grew up here really as a child in the 50s and the 60s. We built our home, for my family now, in 2011 on Middle Highway. And the entrance to our property is on a stretch of road between Berryman and Jonathan Drive. This stretch of Middle Highway is not paved, and I have been told by the East Hampton Town Highway Department that it is under the control of the town trustees. The road is in extremely poor condition. There are 6 houses that use this stretch of Middle Highway to access their homes, and the road is almost unusable now due to the potholes and bumps. It requires that we take a significant detour of over a mile, either down to Springy Banks and around up Hands Creek Road and across Diane Drive. My husband and I are in our 70s and I am disabled, and the road is challenging to navigate. In October 2020, my husband had a heart attack at home, and I was concerned about the ability for the ambulance to drive down this road, so I ended up driving him to urgent care. My daughter-in-law was pregnant for most of 2021 and it was not acceptable for her to drive on the road. The pandemic has made it worse, as it is now used as a regular thoroughfare by US Mail, FedEx, UPS, and many other delivery and service trucks, which are huge, like garbage and things like that. The condition of the road also attracts litter. I've reported dumping of trash to EH Town Police. We once had a dead deer that the East Hampton Town Highway Department refused to move. And 2 weeks ago, we had a downed branch that made it difficult to drive through. I'm asking you to maintain the road. I'm not asking for you to pave it necessarily, though it probably in the long run would be cheaper, but I'm asking it to be graded periodically so that it is safer to drive. My concern personally is the emergency services, is whether it would ever be such as when my husband had his heart attack. And thank you.
The driveway that goes down by like Maggie Kotuk's old farm?
That's our driveway. That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay, it's the road that.
I'm talking about between Berryman's and Jonathan Drive.
Okay. Where are you guys off that driveway?
We're off the road, the Maggie Kotuk's.
Are you past the horse farm?
Yes.
What?
We're at the very end.
Oh, okay.
Right where the turnaround is.
Okay.
You have an easement to get to your driveway on the trustee road. Do you have an easement?
Probably was a trustees when the house was first.
Usually if there's a trustee road and private property's off of it, that property, would we grant the easement?
They get granted an easement from the trustees. Typically, the language of that easement reads basically in short form as follows. All properties that utilize trustee property are allowed to use it. The maintenance, repair, and upkeep of the road is the responsibility of the what's the EZ or whatever, the person who owns the easement, the homeowner.
I've heard that.
It'd be a collaboration of all the homeowners off that.
And typically what does, you're not unique in this situation. There's several other places. And typically what does happen is collaboration between other property owners. Basically get somebody in to grade out the road. Sometimes, because we don't really like owning these roads anymore. They typically have outlived any trustee interest. Our only interest is to provide is to make public access available through them. You mentioned a branch that came down in the road, something like that we'll typically take care of. But in many cases, when these properties were developed, it was an economic gain for savings because the properties were cheaper. They were off of these dirt roads and such. There have been incidents where we've been able to turn those properties over to the town of East Hampton, but the town doesn't have a lot of interest in that for the simple fact that they won't take on a road unless it meets the dimensional requirements from the town. And many times what the town's looking for is drainage and such. We've had situations where developers on some of these small developments that take access off of trustee roads have taken care as one of the conditions of their site plan approval, the improvement of these roads, of these situations.
As you can imagine, since 2011, I have looked into all this and I've read about just about everything you're talking about. And I suppose what I'm asking is a bit of compassion on your part, if you like, of the road is between Middle Highway at the joint of Berriman's and the continuation of Middle Highway at Gabriel's Path. And I'm just doing my best. I've tried this. I can't go to the houses and say, oh, come on, let's pay to get this done.
Well, that's typically, honestly, that's typically the way this occurs.
I absolutely imagine that you're right. I don't disagree with you, and I'm sure I'm coming to you as a private citizen who lives there and who has suffered from this road. And I've tried, ways, but it just doesn't. And, that's all.
You have seen the easement?
The paperwork? I'm sure I did when I bought the land. I honestly, to be perfectly honest, I can't tell you 100% that I know the wording of it. You know the wording of it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we may not have seen it.
Is there a place we can find those? Where would it be, in the county? Filed with the county?
Would be filed with the county, but what did occur?
Filed with each deed.
Yeah, what did occur many times too is property owners developed their properties, never made any application or any formal easement with us, which really leaves you kind of in the lurch because there's no language one way or the other here.
I mean, as you said right at the beginning, am I talking about Maggie Kotuk's Lane? No, I'm not. That's ours. That's our responsibility, and we fully take responsibility for that. I'm asking for the 500 yards or whatever it is between the beginning of that lane and Berriman's. It's not a huge thing. It is.
It's a strange piece because it's paved here and it's paved here.
No, we recognize it, and this is one of those things that this sort of fragmentational development of Middle Highway has occurred over many years. We could look into whether the highway department would be interested in taking the property on.
They took part of it. So maybe they'd be willing to extend.
Take the
There's also, they just bought, Suffolk County just bought water main down the street as well,
Mhm.
which is
This is my
Also-
son who's been living. there
Down
since
Middle
the-
Highways, there's a
Yeah,
water main.
down that whole stretch, there's a new house going up, so they brought water mains down to it, which has also made the road worse.
Are they putting in hydrants? Do you know
Pretty
that?
much.
Do you know if they're putting in hydrants?
Well, they are, more lanes going in, and they're improving.
They put a big drain as well.
There's a hydrant right outside Maggie Kochuk's old house.
We'll talk to the
I'm
highway
gonna be honest,
superintendent.
if you have a big house going up down the road and as an interim, until this thing maybe can be a long-term solution, as an interim solution where you're not spending money. If you got a major home going up down there, typically it's part of being a good neighbor. That's gonna put more wear and tear on the situation than you already have. And typically, most contractors, as a matter of taking care of their own work, will grade the road just to make the deliveries and the work that's going on there easier.
But here's another house being built and we haven't, nobody's
Yeah.
approached us.
There's another house,
about easement.
142, 141.
The other issue, which I didn't mention, but it's been the bane of my existence, is the plowing.
It's not going to get plowed. You know, the thing,
I hear
here's
you.
the issue here, guys, and I'm not trying to be.
I know, I
I'm not
hear
trying to be a bad guy,
Yeah.
but when these properties were developed many years ago, property owners took advantage of the lower cost of that land because public services like paving, like public water and stuff didn't exist on them. You know, it's one of those situations where you got the discount. I want to say you got the discount on the front end of this, but now years later, you're saying, well, gee, I really wish maybe I had invested in a property that perhaps was more costly, but more costly for the simple fact that it was off an improved road. And that's, you know, that's part of the dilemma when you live on, you know, a situation like that. I myself have lived on private road. I've got a mile of private road that I have to maintain. But you know what? When I bought the house, I went into it, I had open eyes. I knew what I was buying, and I accept the responsibility that's there. And I can't go back and say to the seller or to the community that I live in, well, hey, I'd really like you to pick up the cost of maintenance there, because when I went into that, it was open eyes. I knew what I had there. That's just life.
We have tens of miles of roads and there's no way we could ever take on the maintenance of that.
You know, and it's
We
not
really
like
You have tens of miles
Tens of miles of.
of roads that are exactly like that, 50
Correct.
yards.
similar
Correct.
situations.
I would encourage any of you who live nearby or go nearby there to drive down it. It is,
No, I
it's
understand.
horrific right now. It's gotten worse. I've lived out here for the last.
We can talk to the highway department, and I think if the water authority put mains in, we might be able to get some improvement through that, because
I'm
we
wondering.
weren't aware of that as far as.
They definitely put mains in. You can go see it's a new, I don't know what you call it, but there's a new thing and there's a big thing and there's a,
Well,
I don't know what you call
Or
these
any-
things. but
or
there's a-
any of those
There's a big
things-
drain and there's a big, there's
Or
an
any of
access
those-
valve and they.
Are any of those things cast iron in either red or yellow? I'm talking about fire hydrants.
I don't think
We
they
have
put
a
a fire
red one.
hydrant, so they haven't put them in yet,
We
but
have a red one
Well,
outside
but-
Maggie's first house.
Yeah.
There's a red fire hydrant outside Maggie's
it's
first
a
house.
system, it's a system outside my house.
Yeah, well, cisterns and fire hydrants are
I
very,
no, I
very
get that, but
different.
they definitely put the mains into this new house that's in the process of going up. I forget the number. It's like 141 or 143 or something like that.
It's on Middle Highway.
It's on Middle Highway, but it's off of the same bit of road
It's
that we're
off
talking about.
that I don't know how long it
So
stretches. It's
that
probably
collection
500
of houses
yards.
they're building on the first property.
It's what, sorry?
The collection of houses that are being built now on the first property on the driveway.
No,
There's
that's,
only one house that's,
so there's a property that the town owns that's kind of secluded, that's kind of like inaccessible. And then there was another flag lot that was sold a couple of years ago that the house has just gone up. Just in, like, since September.
And the houses on our lane, which are for argument's sake, we'll call Maggie Kotuk Lane, are her two houses, which have now been sold twice. Lisa LaCory and us. That's it.
So can the homeowners can they buy some RCA and have it put down and have the road
Yeah,
graded?
yeah, there's nothing,
not their
we're not gonna stand in the way of that. But given the fact,
I don't doubt that at all.
no, but you gotta understand that.
I do
you know, when
understand,
you-
honestly.
You know, when you developed this property,
We didn't develop.
We didn't develop it. We have not, no, we
We
didn't.
bought in 2000, we bought in 2007.
okay, it had that as an encumbrance, okay? And whether you built the house or bought the house, you closed on the house, you had an attorney. I would expect the attorney, if they were local, they understood what living off a trustee road, or really what is basically a private drive, is about. And I don't, it may very well be a case where if the town wants to take this into the road system, they're going to want to see, they're going to want to levy some sort of, tax
Right.
to cover the cost of drainage and paving. That's typically how these things go. I mean, we had with the urban renewal maps and roads where each person, as they build the home, had to pay into a fund
They would have to do an improvement.
that ultimately ended in the upgrade and paving of the road. Because right now, this is not a town road. It's a.
But if there's a process to hand it over to the town, it would be interesting.
Well,
It's a very short
There's
stretch
a
of road. It's
process,
500 feet maybe.
there's a process if the town wants to take it. We just happen to have in our audience here
Yeah.
an individual who probably knows these trustee roads inside and out. Perhaps Rick Whalen, you could step up to the mic and save us here.
I know the road in question. I mean, I've lived one summer, Maggie Kotuk's house there, so the answer is road improvement.
Could you please identify yourself?
Rick Whalen,
Okay.
local attorney. A road improvement district would be the solution there.
Yes.
That way, the town approves the road, the trustees have to turn that section over to the town when they're done, but the homeowners have to reimburse the town for the cost of the work. So,
And if that's something that you're interested in, I'd be more than happy to try and put something like that together. Probably in an informal fashion, we could get some understanding of what the cost liabilities.
I wonder if it's similar to something that someone told me in the last couple of days, which is about the town or whatever doing the repairs, and then the owners made a charitable contribution to the town to cover the
That's
cost.
called graft. No,
We don't do
no, that's probably not, it's probably not going to go quite like that.
I think,
But on a more, it'll be on a little bit more of a transparent basis, because you know what, for the most part, you know what it costs per running foot or square yard of road to do. So if
To grade,
well, listen, if we're gonna take, this is one of those things, you can't be half pregnant here. You want to either be all in or whatever. For the town to take the road into the road system, they're not gonna come in and grade the road and then walk away. Because then, as soon as they do that, they take on liability that they don't want. However, what our esteemed colleague here, Rick Whalen, just said, what's the name of that again?
road improvement district.
Road Improvement District
they give you a certain.
basically is a path
Yeah, but
for you to
isn't there a
get to where
time
you're trying
period
to
to
get
pay
going.
it back, a fairly lengthy time period?
Well, given the fact that are all of the properties developed at this point? No.
what do you mean?
All the lots are built on.
all of the lots down there are built on. So, okay, the area is fully developed. It's pretty easy to apportion each individual property owner's liability here. And I'll help you look into it, you know, and perhaps that's a good path to go, because once it's done, the town plows the road, it's part of the road system. Everything kind of works easier, but just be aware, I'm sure there's going to be an expense attached.
It's a little bit difficult to identify who these properties are, because you have,
If you go to the assessor's office, they can give you all of that
you
information.
do have people who live further down Middle Highway who will have service trucks using that portion of Middle
Okay.
Highway to get to them.
Okay, that's not gonna come into the discussion on this. This road improvement district will likely only encompass the property owners that take access on that road, not the thoroughfare. It's a good argument to make, certainly, but you're not gonna get property owners beyond or before this that are gonna absorb the costs there.
We'd like to learn more about that.
Okay. It's gonna be a couple weeks before I can do this, but I'll be glad if you give Allison your information. I would be glad to look into it and get back to you.
Good. Okay.
Chris is wait in the waiting.
I don't think this next one's gonna take very long, so I think,
Oh, Chris Gold.
does he mind waiting a little bit?
I can wait.
You can wait? Okay, you can hear us. Thanks, Chris. All right, next we have Tom House and Reverend Robert Stewart.
I just, yeah, so this will be quick. We're just here to invite you to the Pride Parade.
Please go to the.
Sorry, can I give these out to you?
Sure, absolutely.
First, I have copies, but I don't think you'll all need one, but one's a press release, the other is just a flyer. And you were there with Susan, right, at the parade last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for coming.
Great.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was so much more than anticipated. And Rob Stewart, thank you very much. Rob Stewart is the Secretary of Hampton's Pride as well.
Hi, Reverend. I knew your face. I remember you from Boy Scouts.
Oh, yeah, right, long ago.
Yeah.
Yes, when I was at them against it.
Yes.
On the streets.
We won't let him retire. He's not allowed to retire.
So Tom House, I'm a Springs resident. I teach at Bridgehampton School, and I'm president of Hampton's Pride. And we were the one that the mayor called a year ago to ask if we would organize a Pride Parade. We were a brand new 501c3 then. And a mutual friend of ours asking, well, who would organize a Pride Parade? And she said, well, I have a friend who just started Hampton's Pride. Why don't you ask them? So that's how we got involved in it. Last year, we were just sort of scrambling around to get it on people's radar. And so, but there were well over 1,000 people. We had 60 units that signed up. Thank the trustees who came last year. Susan encouraged me to come and to just, sort of spread the word a little bit more this year.
It was a great event.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't see it. I was on my bike, Rob knows, I was on my bike just putting out fires everywhere. There were so many more people than we thought would arrive. So, but a lot more people know about it now. So we expect even more this year. We would love it. Whatever presence that you want to have there, whoever would like to join. It's on June 3rd, Saturday. we have now it's annual. It's the first Saturday of June. I'm looking at those names up there. I think they were almost, well, Kate was there, Sylvia was there, Kathy, and Peter and others, right? All came suddenly. There was a line of people at Village Hall, so it was very nice. We had a lot of town support.
Did we put anything in it, or did we just march?
No, we had the truck decorated with some,
Yeah, I think Susan was driving the truck.
yeah, we had the truck with
Yeah.
the flags on it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I guess we'll be.
I think we can do the same thing again.
Yeah, love it. Whatever you want to do, and it's important to tell people that the parade is open to everyone, whether you identify as LGBTQ plus or you're an ally, right? And we hope that one day that means everyone, right? LGBTQ plus allies. So it's an allies parade as well. Whether you march or spectate, we have a in the park afterwards. We have a DJ that used to spin at the Swamp years ago. So a friend of mine, Karen Ward, and so we have the park until 3 p.m. and we arrange all that with Mike Tracy, Chief Tracy. So anyway, we'd love for you to join in any way you like, or tell your friends, whoever might be interested. The other thing that Hampton's Pride does, and really was our reason for becoming an organization, is that I was a longtime bartender at the Swamp, and then, which became the Star Room. I was there for about 20 summers. And so we are right now contracting with an architect that's going to build an outdoor social area with the town's approval, of course, right on the footprint of the Swamp in what's now Wayne Scott Green. And when we raise money for that, that's most of what our money will go to. And now we have the annual parade, which is pricey as well. So won't be as much as that outdoor social area though. So we're in the future, we envision a place where that's dedicated to LGBTQ plus of the East End, right on the footprint of Club Swamp. And so whatever that turns out to be. Okay, so that's all we have to say, really. Any questions or anything I could answer?
Yeah, I heard it was a great party last year. I'm sorry I missed it.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so, and hopefully this year again. We had great weather, so pray to the weather gods for more of that. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
One credit goes to this guy. He organized the whole damn thing, it was complete. It was really good. It's really good.
He's also secretary of Hampton's Pride, so
I'm his mascot.
Thanks for coming in.
Okay, thank
Good to
you.
see you guys.
Nice to see you.
All right, next we'll go to new business. Dr. Chris Gobler, here to talk about a toxic dinoflagellate blooms appearing on the East End.
Just for the record, before you continue, we have 0 calls on the line. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, well,
How are you?
good evening. Sorry for the slight delay in my arrival, but I guess, late but not, better late than never. Anyway, so presently there are 3 individual shellfish bed closures across the Peconic Estuary. Now, if you're not familiar, so they started, I think about 10 days ago, and that started with Terry Creek and Meeting House Creek. That's in the western extreme of the Peconic Estuary. That same week, the east-western half of Shinnecock Bay was also closed to shellfishing. And so both these cases, and in all these cases, it's due to the dinoflagellate known as Alexandrium that makes saxitoxin, which is a neurotoxin that leads to paralytic shellfish poisoning. And then late last week, the closure in the western part of the Peconics expanded and expanded to really take on all of Flanders Bay and all points west. And in addition, there were 2 creeks on the North Fork that also closed, James Creek and the adjacent creek, the name of which, I'm sorry, not James Creek, Jockey Creek, and the adjacent creek, I think it's called Woolly Creek, but I'm not 100% sure. But 4 PSP-induced shellfish bed closures in one season It's something that hasn't happened in a decade, or more than a decade, I should say. But the last time it did happen was in 2012. And that's of interest, and you could maybe say striking, and that was another year where we had some anomalously warm weather in the winter. And so the way these dinoflagellates grow is that they, at the end of their bloom season, they fall into the sediments and form these things called cysts, which you can think of like seeds. And they actually spend the entire summer, the entire fall, and the entire winter in the sediment, and then reemerge in the spring. Their ability to reemerge, they have to experience a certain amount of cold temperatures, just like a seed would. But then in addition, their cue to reemerge is water temperatures. And so when you get warmer than usual winters and springs, that you see those temperatures earlier. And so this emergence at this time isn't necessarily shocking. In fact, like I said, it's consistent with that trend. Now, we have been monitoring East Hampton waters, and specifically have been looking at the head of 3 Mile Harbor weekly since, I think since the first week of April. And we did see a high count in 3 Mile Harbor in early April. But in happy news, the last 2 weeks, the levels have been exceedingly low. And that could go in two ways. In some ways, maybe it's going to come back. But sometimes these things peak and then don't come back. So let's hope for the latter scenario. But we sampled there again today. And, I can send along a report of what we see once we work up the data. We'll probably have the counts, no later than midweek. So again, there's it's an unusual year from the perspective of these events, but so far in East Hampton waters, at least in 3 Mile Harbor, things are not out of control, and like I said, the levels were high but have come down, and so that may be a good sign that that's as bad as it's going to get.
Chris, I wonder if you could, my understanding is that the DEC puts out mussels and checks the mussels periodically in different places.
Correct.
Is that what triggered the closures, or is it your testing that's...
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question, and I think the answer might be a mix. I actually need to catch up with the DEC to get some details on the current closures. I can say with confidence that the first two were triggered strictly by them monitoring their bivalves that they keep out. Like you said, John, you accurately described it. They collect mussels in March. They put them out in long sleeves that are sectioned into discrete sections, and once a week they take those out and they test those for levels of toxin, and that allows them to make decisions with regards to should the shellfish beds be open or closed. The second round of closures, however, I'm not sure. I think you're well, you weren't hypothesizing, you were asking the question. It's possible that they may have been precautionary and done based on cell counts. I will say every week we're monitoring at least a dozen sites and reporting out to the DEC. So we email them once a week. And we did report high levels the week prior in Flanders Bay and in that location, Jockey Creek. So, they can't put mussels everywhere across the state. And I do know that in addition to looking at cell counts, they do on occasion also will look for indigenous mussels and pull those and test those as a it's yet another means for monitoring. So so in summary, first two closures were definitely triggered by measurements within shellfish. The second two, I'm not sure whether it was continued shellfish monitoring or if it was looking at the cell counts and then taking the precautionary measure of the closures.
questions. Yeah?
And in terms of going forward in East Hampton, you're looking for this saxitoxin, or are you looking just for the cells?
So we're looking just for the cells, and we're looking both for this species and then a second species that, as you probably know, we look for that comes right after this one is called Dinophysis. And in that case, we are monitoring for the toxins of that species. We have a method that's a little bit less complex and cumbersome than the saxitoxin approach. And so in that case, we're doing both the cells and the toxin, at least in 3 Mile Harbor. Whereas for the Alexandrium and the saxitoxin, we're just really focused on the cells.
Hi there, Ann Welker, Southampton Town Trustee. Thank you, Dr. Gobler, for giving this update. We're grateful for it. Quick question. My understanding is that the dinoflagellate bioaccumulates. So what I'm curious about is what's the length of time until this cycle reverses itself, basically? Because thank you for explaining the life cycle, because that's an important part for people to understand, that it's always in our waters. It cycles up and it cycles down. So thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's 2 answers to it, maybe more, but the first answer is, as long as the cells are in the water at elevated densities, there's the opportunity for the shellfish to continue to accumulate the cells via filter feeding and continue to be toxic. Once the cells are gone, then there's the opportunity or the cells get to low levels, there's the opportunity for the shellfish to what's called depurate, that is break down and get rid of the toxins. And the DEC's policy, if I'm not mistaken, it might even be mandated by the FDA, that once there is a closure, the shellfish bed can only be reopened via 3 consecutive weeks of negative tests. And so getting a little bit more granular there. Typically, by June, we know we will no longer see this organism. My prediction is that for this year, because we saw it earlier, that it will also vacate our waters earlier or turn back into those cysts that go to the bottom earlier. But I think what the DEC will be doing now is there'll be weekly testing, and they'll look for, like I said, 3 consecutive no detects, and then that would allow them to reopen.
Okay, thank you. I had a fairly extensive conversation with Ed Warner, who, as you know, is my fellow Southampton Town Trustee. He's a 5th generation Bayman, so he is just a wealth of knowledge. And he said, like you did, that these have been occurring over the past, I think he said 6 or 8 years, and you're saying a bit longer. He did not seem, and I may be speaking slightly out of turn here, but he did not seem unduly concerned about this, because as you're saying, it is a time period and it's finite time period. So I think that's an important point.
100%. Yeah. And it's, it's a seasonal event. And essentially it's, this can happen any spring. There's probably been, 20 shellfish bed closures due to PSP in New York. We never had one until 2006, I'm sorry. And then since then they've been, I'd just say, irregular. And, the hot spots on the east end have been Shinnecock Bay. East Hampton has never had a closure, and happy news, but 3 Mile Harbor has had some high cell densities, and there, I think it might have been the 2012 year, I can't remember, but it may have been when the levels got so high the DEC were actually looking at the shellfish there. But and the nearest body of water to have a shellfish bed closure was Sag Harbor Cove, and that was in 2012.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you to the trustees for asking Dr. Gobler to speak too.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So keep the vigilance up, I guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in and giving us the update. Explain.
Yeah. No, my pleasure.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman.
Okay. Have a good rest of meeting.
All right. Old business. We have a request from Rick Whalen on behalf of Cynthia Crane on 864 Springs Fireplace Road to relocate the existing dock eastward so the ramp to the dock lands on the East Hampton Town easement. Does everybody have a copy of these maps? No?
No.
No.
You do have copies of maps or?
We discussed this a while ago, right? I remember.
I guess I'll introduce myself. Richard Whalen, attorney for the applicant for Cynthia Crane, office of Whalen Filer, PLLC. So, you've seen this before. This is the dock and Acabonic that was approved originally in 1984. Cynthia bought the property about 2 years ago, or at this point, I guess 2021, or I don't know, losing track, 2 or 3 years ago. So the issue in terms of re-permitting it, one of the issues that came up was that the ramp, there's a aluminum ramp that gets you to the catwalk. The catwalk takes you to a seaward ramp, which takes you to the float. And the landward ramp currently lands above the mean high water line, which would mean it lands on town property because the town owns a reserved area. In the subdivision, there's a 4-lot subdivision that goes back to late 1970s that created this lot. The town not you guys, but the town has had a problem with the fact that that ramp is landing on town-owned property. So the idea was to shift it, and that's what we propose to do. It still lands on town-owned property. Again, it's only the very landward edge of an aluminum ramp that's 3 feet wide, but it will now land in an area that's encumbered by an easement that predates the town's ownership of the town's property. That easement goes back even before the subdivision was created. This land was once owned by the Talmadge family, the Springs Talmadges, obviously. And when they sold the property to, forget what's the name of the person on the map there again? What's her name?
Waldler?
Was it? Yeah, Wilder. So when the property was originally sold to Wilder from the Talmadges, they retained a right to potentially put in an access, including like a boat launching area, that was benefiting the property that Talmadge owned on the other side of Springs Fireplace Road. That's now the Talmadge Farm subdivision. So there's a third-party easement, which predates the town's ownership and essentially limits, to some extent, what so it's a limitation on the town's ownership interest. So the town doesn't have a problem if the ramp for the dock lands there, because that's already encumbered property. So that's basically what we've done. We've shifted it over. We'd still be using the same components, except that, of course, when Cindy bought the property, it had a 80 square foot dock. We now know that from the original permit, the dock was only to be 40 square feet at the float itself I'm talking about. So we will replace the original float with a float that is, actually it's going to be, I think, 5.5 by 7 feet in dimensions, which is a little bit under 40 square feet. Other than that, the components are the same components that were there when she bought the property, except, as you know, she did replace the catwalk. So the catwalk frame was still the frame that she will use. So it's the original length and width of the catwalk. But when she bought the property, there were galvanized steel pipes, and that was not very stable. So we would propose to reinstall that catwalk with tropical hardwood 2x4s.
2x4s or 4x4s? You have 4x4s.
4x4, sorry, not 2x4s, 4x4s. So that's what would support the catwalk in the bottomland.
Jim and I have been in discussion with the town about this, and as Rick says, they're not going to have a problem running this onto that easement.
Yeah, we had considered resolution on this a while ago, where the dock, we'd approve the dock where it was. What came up with the town in those discussions is the fact that the language in this scenic easement would not allow that. So the resolution here that Rick's discussing is something that I believe at this point, land acquisition is good with, natural resources is good with, the town attorney is good with, and what it really comes down to is our board giving the nod on this. So that said, would anybody like to have any questions, discussion?
I have a question. How are we rectifying the fact that the trustee permit doesn't include any ramp, just includes the 4x10 floor?
Well, I think as part of the long discussions that we had prior to this is from, I believe it was somewhere around 1985, we issued a permit on this property every year, okay? The application fees were paid for inspection and for the dock. And quite frankly, I think the burden fell to a degree on the trustees to the fact that it was evident that at no point from 1985 until 2 years ago had anybody ever actually inspected this dock. Because the present homeowner did not create the structure that's there now. She did, however, improve the structure and do things without permits, which is what brought this whole thing to light in the first place. But at some point, I think it behooves everybody here to reset. I mean, we can stick on the fact that it is not what was originally there until the cows come home. But here's how this could play out. We could say, all you can have is the original dimensional platform that we understood that was there. On the original survey, there is a penciled in portion, which I think all parties involved in that are, since, unless we get out the Ouija board, we're not going to get to the bottom of that. That's up for interpretation. We could deny all of this, at which point I think we can guarantee litigation related to this. And honestly, from my personal feeling, I don't think this is working.
One of my concerns is there very well may be things out there on the marsh,
and we are going to find, as part of the inventory that we're preparing this year, I think we're going to find quite a few of those.
And does this set a precedent for having to, in effect, permit whatever's out there?
Well,
Can I just say something about that? I think when you do your inventory, if you find a half a dozen docks or platforms in Acquabana Creek, I'd be surprised. That's about it. I mean, I don't think there were more than that. And this one was originally permitted in 1984 in some form or fashion. So if there's somebody else who wants to come along and say, hey, I have a permit from 1984 too, maybe they have, but there's nobody else out there.
We have aerials that we can look at, but John.
Well, another thing that I'm confused about is the marsh. I mean, I know Rick has claimed that up to the high tide mark is trustee property. Now, I mean, in this particular area, that's not very far from the water. But in other parts of the marsh, it's extremely far from the water. And I know there are properties along Acquabonic that, I believe are, the part of the marsh is privately owned. Some of it is under control of the Nature Conservancy, some is the town. I mean, I don't know if that's part of this justification here, that, we own, we're now claiming we own to the marsh, and how that's gonna impact other things that are, structures on the marsh that we never, as far as I understand, the trustees never assumed we're on their property. But now are we saying that vast stretches of this Accabonac marsh or any marsh are in fact our property?
But that was Rick's claim, that the marsh is trustees' property. I don't know that I agree.
Let me, can I just,
I think to kind of take a step back here, John, I think the critical thing here is the fact that at this point, Scott Wilson's office feels they're okay with this, okay? They were not okay with the pre-existing location simply because it didn't land in an area that would allow such a thing.
let me just add one more thing, because this is apropos what John is asking, I think. I've talked to Dave Saskis, who did the latest survey. His mean high water mark is the edge of the marsh.
His mean high water mark is the 1 foot contour. I spoke to him too.
Right, but he basically, his guys went out and staked that, and their stakes are right on the edge of the marsh. They doesn't come inland.
Well, he told me that he and
a lot of other
local
they use
surveyors
adjustments.
Consider the 1 foot contour the mean high water mark.
Okay, but the edge of marsh is probably above 1 foot above your mean sea level. I think you got more than a 1 foot drop off there. So right now he's regarding the edge of the edge of the bank to be the mean high water mark.
That's not what he's got on that survey.
That's what he told me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's
He doesn't show the edge of bank on the survey.
He's showing edge, mean high water, elevation 1.0.
That's not the edge of the marsh. That's not where the water meets the marsh. Is that what you're saying? The edge of the marsh?
What I'm saying. Where the water meets the marsh is, that's what his guys staked as the edge of the mean high water line.
This was a common area, wasn't it, in one of the subdivisions?
Yes. When they did the resolution for the.
When they subdivided the property, they made this a common launching area, right?
Yeah.
Well, they created a reserved area where the marsh is, and that was donated to the town. There's this separate right that belongs to the people across the road as a private easement.
Turning radius and stuff.
That has nothing to do with the town. It predates the town, and it actually predates the subdivision.
I mean, this area was kind of picked for a dock or for boating activity already.
What we have is an opportunity to reset this. It would be permitted for what it actually is. And go from there.
And where's the easement it's landing in? So it's not getting moved anywhere, right?
It is getting moved
to the east, I think.
Right
Oh,
now,
okay.
this is in this area, it's getting
Right.
shifted over to the east or to the north.
And that's going to also eliminate this pathway through the reserve area.
Why does it eliminate the pathway? It's just
Because of access.
Yeah. Oh, it comes from over here. Right.
How is she going to access the dock?
Well, it doesn't
The
clearly.
The question is whether she's going to reroute the path or not. I mean, she's obviously going to get down there.
My understanding is that was no longer going to be cut.
I thought there was an easement, a scenic easement.
The scenic easement actually allows her to clear the scenic easement entirely. There's no clearing limits in the scenic easement.
Allows her to clear the.
Remember that it was meadow when the scenic easement was granted. There was all grassland. So there's no limitations on it. When you get to the town property, and this is, I guess, the question. I mean, do you want? Cindy has told me, look, I can walk down the existing path and then just turn left and go to the.
That's really not. That's outside of our jurisdictional interest. That's a discussion for you and the town of East Hampton. I thought that this was a good resolution at this point. If anybody else wants to discuss this, if not, I'd like to make a motion to approve this as it is.
I'll second it.
Favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
I can't vote yes for this tonight. I can't. So I'll just vote no.
3, 5. Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
6. Yeah. 6. No. Yeah.
Can you please reiterate how that vote went? I missed it.
John, you didn't vote against it, so.
Yes, you did.
Oh, you voted against? No?
John,
Okay.
no.
John voted no.
Everyone else voted yes.
Okay, who seconded the motion?
Bill.
Okay, thank you.
Vanderbilt.
Ben and Bill. Ben and Bill.
Ben and Bill. Me and me. Ben and Bill.
All right, next, dead trees on both paths. You want to talk about that, Jim?
Not really, but I will. Anyway, about a year ago, we were approached by a property owner down on Bull Path. It's a trustee-owned portion of road about some of these rigid pines, and actually coincidentally, some white pines that had died. They are definitively and clearly on trustee property. They are now at a stage, they've been dead for, I think, at least 2 or 3 years. Now they're at a stage where they're starting to break off. They're coming down in the road. They're coming down on private property. Okay, a little different than the woman that came here about her access issues with the road. We're a property owner here. And as such, we are liable for any health and safety issues evolving out of our negligence in caring for something like this. So that said, I had offered to the property, to the adjacent property owner last week to meet with a certified tree guy, have him look at it, get a price to remove the dead trees in this area. My thought was this: they're pretty much denuded at this point, but any stuff that I thought, if there's needles in that, my thought is have somebody cut the trees down, chip the tops, and just slash the cut down material on the ground and leave it. My only reason for asking to get the tops chipped is I don't want to take one liability and create another by creating a potential fire hazard.
So kindling that
with
dead white pine.
these things. I don't expect it to be a tremendous amount of money. Do I think it's going to possibly set a precedence for other properties? I certainly do expect it, but I think this is an opportunity for us, one, to deal with something that in the absence of addressing it, I think we could find ourselves being sued at some point.
We're aware of it, the tops have fallen off.
But more importantly, to begin to define how we would deal with these things, because there's dead pine trees all over the place. Now, my feeling is this: if the dead pine trees are interior or in an area where it's low public traffic, there's no road or that, I don't see a reason for us to address it unless, let's say the tree comes down, goes down across the trail. And I would even take a pause on that, because if it's a trail that's part of the trail system in East Hampton, the trails group routinely goes through and cuts stuff. And I think it's something that it's in our interest to basically deal with it, because I do feel an obligation here.
There are driveways there. These things are, mostly the beetle hasn't been attacking white pines. And these are substantial white pines.
Well, some of these, but most of them were rigid pines, but oddly enough, there was a few white pines.
I went out and took pictures of them there.
Good height, but
they're like 60 feet.
the tallest, most of them are about between 30 and 40.
Most of the little ones wouldn't bother anything when they fall down. These things,
Yeah,
That's
a
dangerous.
couple of the tops fall, yeah, the top, it could theoretically land on
I
the
think
car.
from a contractor standpoint, it's a fairly easy deal because it's something that they can set up with an aerial truck in the road and do this work basically right off an aerial truck.
If you had the right bucket, it would not be
And they can just drop it, right?
Well, they can't just, no, you can't just drop a tall tree like that because you gotta look at, the path it's gonna take and have some confidence. Most of these trees would have to be limbed and sectioned, but
What's the nature of this property and the nature of the private property around it? I mean, how much acreage are you talking?
We looked at it
these
the
are
last
good
time.
sized lots. I'm guessing these lots, John, are probably a couple acre lots. And this one property owner that brought it to our attention, he has already basically dealt with all of the trees that were on his property.
What's our property size?
Size, it's a road. So it's, I want to say,
You mean that the pines are on the shoulder?
Adjacent,
basic, well, shoulders and interior enough that when they topple, they basically can fall out and across the road.
So all the trees on our property would have to come, none of the trees are interior enough to be left.
No, not really, because what you're looking at is, I think, when I looked at that, I think it's the widest, it's maybe from me to Allison wide. That's what you're looking at. Most of it is much less than that.
How many trees?
it was about 10 pretty good sized ones.
I'd say,
maybe. It's
I'd
probably
say it
more
was
than that.
between.
So that's not gonna break the bank, you know?
I don't think
It's
so.
gonna be.
And you know what,
couple days work.
before we do this, we'll get a number. If we think the number is high, we can always get a competitive number. The individual that this homeowner was using is somebody that I do know. It's a real tree guy. He's really insured. He knows what he's doing. This is one of those issues. I would hire a real professional on this, because if you get somebody that, even if they got workers' comp, if you don't have a rider that you're a tree guy and anything, God forbid, happens, we just become named in whatever litigation. Like if one of the guys, let's say this guy comes down and he doesn't have the appropriate insurance, and his guy plays Rocky Squirrel and falls out of the tree and breaks his back, guess who's getting sued? We. So
If he says he's a tree guy and he's got a bucket truck, there's a good chance he's insured properly.
this is
Make sure.
the individual in question. is-
Yeah,
It's Kevin Savastan.
Yeah, he's been
Yeah,
around
I
for a
think
while.
it's
Yeah.
a good choice. Yeah, you know,
So if it's okay,
yeah.
I'll put that together. If it's all right, what I would like to do is get an approval on this tonight, subject to the board approving the cost, because I don't want to go into this open-ended. And if we can agree that that could be just circulated by email, and get everybody to weigh in on it. That's the way I would like to do it.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So.
I'll make that motion.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Committee reports. Acquonic Creek, we have a request from Land Planning Services on behalf of Bonnie Maslin, 307 Kings Point Road, to renew trustee permit HC 1-22.
This is a project that was done. This was basically a resetting of some stone revetment at the height that it originally was at. The work primarily was done, I believe, last year. There is the revegetation work that I believe is left to be done on this one. So I think it probably makes sense to do a renewal on it.
But it's been done.
The revetment work is done, as far as I know. I looked at this last year. It looked like the revetment work was done, but like the beach grass and stuff had not been.
So they did the revetment work under the original permit.
Under the original permit, yes.
That's correct.
I'll make a motion to renew the permit. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who seconded that?
I did too.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have a request from Keith Grimes on behalf of 91 Water's Edge to replace an existing bulkhead. Let's go down there and look at that.
Well, because this is the one Mike
Yes.
brought up
Yeah.
last meeting.
We were talking about the. Yes.
We tabled it because we wanted to look at the old permit to see if there was passing way type language. And there is, actually. There's that whole clause that requires the 5-foot walkway landward of the bulkhead, and then there's a separate section in the individual conditions that talks about not impeding public access on the beach or the bank. So.
And that was it, that was in the original
That was in the
permit?
2008 permit.
Okay, so do we want to approve this conditional on
Maintaining the
on the
existing.
easement? Now, if there's gonna be an easement there, was it ever filed with the county?
This is not one of those formal easement things. This is that, typical language that's been put in all trustee
I don't,
permits.
honestly, and we don't have our counsel here tonight, I honestly do not know how you can, without having a recorded easement, permit or require trespass onto private property. And that's what we're talking about here.
Well, they're kind of agreeing with, to allow it if they're signing off on the permit.
Okay, well, but it's one of those things.
It's kind of a trade-off, Jim.
Yeah, an enforcement type thing. If it isn't a recorded easement, you can enforce it.
Well, let me read these then. I think it's, if it's debatable, let's see what it actually says. Yeah, with me to find it.
The passing way, there's one there now. I don't see how the bulkhead is going to interfere with it or change it.
So in the body of the permit, it says, in the event that this permit is issued for work involving construction or reconstruction of a dock, dredging of a channel or basin, or the construction of a bulkhead, subject to the applicant and or owner of the premises maintaining at all times a passing way on the uplands not less than 5 feet in width to enable residents of the town of East Hampton to pass around the said channel, basin, or bulkhead. And then below in the special conditions, I guess, or the list of other conditions, it's in this particular permit, it says access along the beach or bank for the public shall not be impeded. Now, I looked at some other permits and they all include that first paragraph, but they're all a little bit different in the, individual listings, depending on what the permit is for. They don't all say, access along the beach or bank.
This one does?
The other one, let's see, do I have the other one? Here's one for Hedges Banks Drive staircase.
Yeah, I think we should try and stick to the
access along the
application.
Yeah, Mike went down there and looked at it, right? He seemed to be in favor of it. And, it's, keep the same language, maintain a passing way.
If you want to put it, somebody wants to make a motion, keep the same language as the next permit.
He's not changing just replacing what's there.
Yeah,
I mean, there's gonna be something that comes up in every bulkhead, dock permit that we
Yes, no, I remember, like, if it's a new structure, the first one, but this is renewing it.
This already had that language and that easement on the first one, and I'll make a motion to approve it. Second, conditional on the original language in the last permit.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Harbor management, moorings, guidance on moorings left in over the winter.
Allison's gonna frame this question for us.
Yes, please. So do you want me to come up so you can hear me, or?
Yes,
So effectively, I am hoping that the board can provide guidance on what to do when we have moorings that are left in over winter. This past winter, we had approximately 7 to 8, mostly in 3 Mile Harbor. And I'm asking for a few things just to make it easier to know what we in the office should do when these issues come up. One, either make a standardized protocol for what to do when that happens and what steps the board wants to take, or if the board prefers that it's handled on a case-by-case basis, that the board establish a specific committee to handle these specific cases, just because they kind of get kind of funky and convoluted, so that they can direct the office as to how to proceed. Or if there is no issue and the board is fine with the moorings being left in over winter, that we either maybe remove that language from the rules and regulations with regard to moorings. Commercial moorings, they're allowed to be kept in as per our current rules and regulations. We've had some issues where typically what happens is Marine Patrol will do their sweep in the winter, reach out to the office, say, hey, this is what's in, what do you want us to do? I will contact them. Sometimes it's a puzzle piece trying to figure out whose it is if the applicant or permittee hasn't put their stickers on the actual mooring ball. And there's usually some back and forth. Most people comply and will remove the mooring. This particular year, we had a few that did not. One particular instance where the actual mooring was impeding access to the ramp at Stephen Hand's Path. It wasn't removed until about April 16th. After which then the applicant emailed us and said, I'd like my mooring. And Jay Sharon was like, what do I do? So it sounds as though Marine Patrol is maybe looking for a little bit of direction too, if I'm understanding it correctly. So I was hoping that maybe there could be some sort of, this is what we do.
Are you saying it was removed a week and a half ago?
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be out by December 15th, is that?
They're supposed to be out by December 1st.
First, okay.
So there were a handful, some of them were left in because one of the marine contractors forgot. The people had said, hey, I want them out. They forgot. They called us, I called them. And as soon as that happened, they went in, removed them all immediately. So it's really just a matter of when we get these sort of funky cases, what happens? So I'm just looking for direction from the board in some sort of either, these are the steps that we take, or who wants to handle that when that happens?
Were they all contacted over the winter?
They were. This particular case was contacted by me via the phone. I also spoke with their wife, and I was told it was going to be removed, and then Jay kept giving updates, and there's just no direction as to.
Allison, if we could in the future on these things document, other than a phone call, an email.
There was.
Registered letter.
Yeah, there was an email.
Maybe the way we've come, the policy that we've adopted with respect to duck blinds, because we run into the same issue.
Well, exactly, and kayaks too. So,
Okay,
yeah.
and what we do there is, listen, if you haven't removed your duck blind in a timely manner, and we have a situation like we have here, somebody else gets your slot, okay? Because the next year, we just pass over your application, and perhaps somebody else occupies your space. And, it's worked pretty well in terms of people being compliant because, hey, you can be very angry that you lost your spot, but it's sort of a self-created crisis.
Who's checking the duck blinds? Or is it just?
No, you know what, actually, I ride around and then, a lot of times we get noticed by adjacent property owners.
Yeah. Exactly.
The same people that were complaining about the duck blind when it was during the season.
Exactly. Either that or, Marine Patrol will sometimes see them and call us and ask. And so in theory, that if I'm understanding correctly, we get the call from Marine Patrol, we call them, we can send them an email, and an actual physical letter is what you're asking for. Right.
Well, I think the only reason, if you're going to take action such as a holdout for that spot next year, that
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
you pretty much need to document our due diligence. And sometimes phone calls are not necessarily always good documentation, because you can easily find yourself into
Absolutely.
a he said, she said situation. If you're sending somebody a registered letter, they signed for that letter. You know that they received that letter. Yes, is it an expense? Well, it's an expense that we could typically apply to the following permit, and just have language in our conditions on the permit that if you haven't removed your permit and we have to resort to this, you're responsible for all of our administrative costs related to that.
And the cost of pulling it out, probably.
Well, we haven't, that's another thing. If we have to hire a contractor to go over there and pull a permit, it's a real expense.
Yeah.
And hopefully we don't have to do that. But Dave, I think what you're describing is the extreme.
But they know that's the penalty, so that might,
Yeah, listen, at the end of the day, what we're looking for here is decent compliance. If everybody leaves their mooring, and if we get a winter where the harbor freezes up or that, and you got real ice, the ice starts moving, it's going to drag those moorings all over the place. And you're going to have an even more difficult time come springtime figuring out who's who. The commercial ones, because there's not very many of them, it's pretty easy.
And they are there regularly throughout the winter too, so they know what's going on.
Their own situation mostly.
So there are currently still moorings in place that and some of them haven't contacted us to renew, sitting outside of Hampton waters where we've had some issues too. I just received photographs from one of the marine contractors showing us what the chains look like. And I shared it with John. I can share it with you guys too, if that mattered to you guys at all. But so those particular instances, if they come back to us, what am I saying to them?
Oh, so we're going to end up paying somebody to pull those for sure.
That's already been pulled.
Yeah.
That's an applicant who pulled theirs to have him look at it. But that is shot. And I have a feeling that some of the other ones look like that too. So I just don't know what to do about them. Or nothing. I don't have to do anything.
Is one issue, correct me if I'm wrong, is one issue that patrol checking sometimes shortly after December 1st is a sort of an informal procedure?
It seems
Last year, the year before, by the way.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if that's been taken out in quite some time. So from my understanding, Marine Patrol will do certain sweeps of the harbor, not necessarily the full harbor, at various portions of time, and then come back. It does not seem like it's one fell swoop with one huge list. It seems like it's pocketed with whatever they need to do for their conditions and whatnot.
I think, Allison, you're bringing this to us at a good time, because they're just putting moorings in now. If we're going to bear the cost of pulling some of these delinquent moorings, it's a good time, because they could pull them when they're out setting up the moorings. And you're not paying somebody to run over there just specific for this.
Right.
Still gonna cost you $400.
Still gonna cost us money.
Why do we should get an impound fee before we give it back?
That is in our,
I think most of these non-compliant moorings are small boat moorings. I don't think they're gonna ask for them back. I think you're right. They don't want to pay the impound.
Yeah, they might not.
There's 3 in Northwest Harbor as well, right off LY Brook Landing.
There are a few commercials up there. I'd have to double check, but some of them might not be.
I thought maybe we should try to formalize this process a little bit more, maybe like send Marine Patrol a letter from the clerk, asking specifically to do a sweep of the harbors December 15th or whatever, report it to the office, and then do another sweep after after a certain period of time, giving these people to take their moorings out. And then those moorings would be documented and they wouldn't get another permit.
Are these moorings that are documented or the ones that don't?
No, they're all pretty much ones that have permits with us. Sometimes it's a matter of them forgetting, whatever it might be.
Do it, just put a mooring in.
So why isn't it's the person who owns the mooring is the one who goes and physically takes it out. Why isn't the contractor puts it in? They just have a date, they put it a date, they take it out.
In theory, I think that's the way that it's supposed to work.
That's the way it works, but you know what you do, you get a few people that want to put their own moorings in because they don't want to pay a guy to do it. So.
I pull it out. I just pull it out myself. I take my kayak and dump it.
And I think a lot of these small boat moorings they're probably 100-pound or less.
Yeah, 100-pound mushroom rate, I can handle that.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's why you're getting these things left in more and more. It's like, well.
I think compliance is the right word. We have to have them comply.
Right, and I think what I'm asking is which direction does the board want to take in order to either obtain that? Just so that I have some direction when because I don't like to be a pain in the you-know-what, but these issues keep coming up and we keep having increasing, people moving in.
Let's say you got the individual with the delinquent mooring. Okay, we come into yet another year and we've said, we've paid somebody to pull your mooring.
Mm-hmm.
What I would half expect is at some point during the season, you'd get an individual that would skip the whole process and just try and dump the mooring in with no permit.
Right.
Does Marine Patrol have the authority, the rights to impound that vessel on the end of the mooring at that point? That's your control.
I'm pretty sure they do, yeah.
Well, they have enforcement power for the trustees based on the town code. What that means, I'm not sure.
But okay, if you don't have, because at this point, you're not gonna have a mooring permit. If you've basically taken it upon yourself to put a mooring in illegally and attach your boat to it, because Marine Patrol can't go by and cut them off the mooring and us pull the mooring out.
Have that happen?
Because that's a hazard to navigation.
Where they cut it off?
No, somebody put a mooring in without a permit.
Yes, so what ends up happening is that particular instance, we were able to figure it out because they had held a permit with us previously.
Right.
But that person got a summons, and it happened the following year and they got another summons. And so Marine Patrol can write the summons and then it goes to court and then it typically gets.
But at one point they were actually going in to take
them out. They can, if they have a boat. I think Tim Treadwell was talking to us about it last year or maybe in the fall. The boat was having some mechanical issues. They couldn't actually physically pull it recently. I do think that in some of these cases, had Marine Patrol had the physical mechanical capability to pull them, they probably would have.
That boat's in the water now.
The boat that we were talking about?
Yeah, well, we know he's not using it.
Well, that person can't be using it.
No, I mean, Marine Patrol's.
Oh, Marine Patrol's in the water. Okay, gotcha. Okay. So I'm hearing we'll mail them. We'll send Marine Patrol by December 15th. They'll report back to the office.
I think we should send them a letter from the clerk. The board has decided this is what they'd like. I mean, Marine Patrol might say, wow, we can't do that. I mean, I think they have to kind of, that's part of their job.
They're pretty.
You might have to have them back and forth.
They've been pretty agreed.
Yeah, there's not a lot there.
And it may be something, rather than send them a letter demanding that they do something, because it's somewhat of a courtesy, is to ask them to please contact us and have a discussion about it. And I think we'll get what we're looking for.
And when they apply for the permit, it needs, maybe it already is, but they need to sign their initials where it says like, by December 15th, you have to be out or you pay for it and we take your, and
They do, so it's in
Lose your slot
multiple
next year.
places on the application where they sign understanding it has to be removed by December 1st.
And in truth, Allison, if you've got one that, let's say, was delinquent this year, I would not take a chance on whether they're gonna pay for us to pull their mooring again next year. I would add that as a cost, okay? So that, let's say you were delinquent on getting your mooring out this year. Well, what you're gonna have to basically is pay a security.
That's a good idea.
Okay, that before we issue another permit next year, if we paid to have that mooring pulled, one, you pay for that, what it costs us, plus the administrative costs on the removal of that mooring, and you pay a security in the event that we have to pull your mooring again next year. And that security probably should be prohibitive to that people are compliant. I mean, if we're just paying to pull their moorings,
right,
and basically giving them credit through the winter, I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's necessarily going to work.
Right.
There has to be some, I want to say, financial deterrent here.
Why wouldn't we charge security for someone who had left it all winter after being contacted and asked to remove it? Charge the security anyway, just in case they leave it again.
Yeah.
What do we suggest the security is?
I would get, no, can I tell you what? I would get pricing on what it costs to set or remove moorings.
$400.
Is it 400?
It's approximately 400.
Is that what Louis Green?
More than one, well, Mendelman, I think somebody else.
Yeah, it's between 4 to 5.
Okay. So
That was,
listen,
I think that was for a large mooring.
That alone would be a
I have a
deterrent.
feeling the charge is the same for.
Yeah, because you know what, can I tell you what? It's one of those things, labor and time is probably almost exactly the same, whether it's a little mooring or a big mooring.
Right.
You go over there and, and the reason you want to pull out every year is because they have to be inspected.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
you put it- you
this is
put it-
obviously
you know,
a
you-
problem.
You leave it in the water for 2 or 3 years, one link of chain gets rotten. and-
Well, I mean, that's, I'm pretty confident that particular one had been in for a long time.
Yeah, it looks like, looks like it, 5 years or 3.
Allison, do you
Okay.
feel like you got enough to work with?
I think so. So I am with it. Should I do that? Am I understanding that this particular person who just took it out a week and a half ago, that I am to put a security request on that one, or is this for?
My feeling is we should start this next year.
This guy.
I mean, there's other moorings in the
incur any
water. I mean,
expenses?
we're not pulling them. We're not hiring people to pull them. We're not, this is sort of selective. That's why I said we should, I think, formalize the process a little
We
bit.
didn't incur any
At some
expenses
start
with
point
this
and then
particular mooring this
do the
year,
whole
right?
thing.
We should.
All right,
trying to
so
avoid
John,
it.
that's fair enough, but I think if we're
I
gonna
agree,
do
John.
that, what we need to do is basically put this letter that outlines the process moving forward. Any moorings that are issued this year will be required to be removed no later than December 1st. We will be asking Marine Patrol to go around and basically enumerating the ones that are there after December 1st. Those moorings, you will get one 30-day period in which to react, at which point we will probably pull your mooring. And for you to get the mooring next year, you will have to pay us for the removal of that mooring plus any of our administrative costs. And you will have to pay a security for the next season on top of that. If let's say this is a problem on 2 consecutive years, we will no longer issue moorings to that individual.
what part of the process of mooring applications are we at now?
Most of them have been returned to us
So
and
it's a little
permits
late
that.
for this year.
No, you can send out
We can
this
send, I can
letter.
send a letter to everybody.
You can
This
send
is
this
basically,
letter to all of the mooring holders this year.
It's a
And,
warning letter. Yeah, it's a warning letter for next year.
It's just,
You gotta
it's
take it
not a
out.
warning, it's describing our policy that was
A reminder.
adopted on April the 24th of 2023. So
Making a motion?
we need to make a motion. John's gonna make the
I
motion.
hope somebody wrote all this down.
She did. John, I think, is the guy to make the motion.
I'll make a
This is
motion.
for John Aldridge,
And I'll second
mooring
it.
rules and regulations. I'll second it.
Okay, I made the
I
motion.
think Tim beat you to that one. Are you all going to
All
approve it?
those in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
That is very helpful. Thank you
Okay,
very
now
much.
you're gonna have to go sit down.
I'll bring the keg next time.
Okay, fair enough.
All right. Next, we have requests. Let's see that. A request from Jim Walker at InterScience Research Associates. To modify trustee permit NAP-1-22 regarding dredging of Devon Yacht Club.
Okay, what has happened, what's precipitated this is there is some different language in term on one of the agencies' permit they've issued to Devon. Okay, it is going to require them to go back to, not just to us, but to the town to modify the permits. What I asked Jim Walker to do is to please get the modifications and the language squared away for the DEC Army Corps in the town. And when they did come back to us with it, we would modify the permit for it. It's just the dredging dates, they're having some disagreement. Army Corps has thrown in dates that are like just different. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So I didn't think this was something that was worth tackling because in all likelihood, we'd be approving something that we're going to be discussing again in short order. We meet twice a month. My feeling with Jim was, listen, when you've got something that you think we should vote on, come back to us and we'll vote on it.
This is for dredging that will take place, not this year.
Not this year. It's already been done this year. I think we got some time on this.
The Army Corps permit allows them to dredge between May 21st and May 31st.
Yes.
No, the
That's
dredge windows.
sort of the dilemma on this
Yeah,
one.
the dredge window.
It completely conflicts with
conflicts.
DC in town. So
What's going on over there?
at where? Well,
Something changed.
They gave us a horrible.
Yeah, something changed.
well, everybody that we were used to dealing with has retired. What's happening is you're dealing with a group of people with the institutional memory on a lot of the, recurring permits is pretty much gone.
I see more of this.
We're not gonna might, it's a short thing.
Yeah, I think the engineers work on that.
So
right?
I'd like to make a motion, we table this.
Second.
Make a motion. Table. I don't think we have to
We
make a
need,
motion.
we just table.
It's on the agenda.
All right. Nappy Lazy Point, request from Charlie Whitmore to sublet his leasehold at 192 Shore Road to Mark Webb.
There was some stuff missing on this before. Looks like it's all been caught up. Our counsel isn't here tonight just to verify that. But it looks to be in order. I'd like to make a motion that we approve this,
Subject to.
subject to our counsel's review. Second that. Yeah. I think it's all squared away. I was hoping Chris was gonna be here tonight.
Yeah, this lease goes into effect May 10th. So I think we have to do it tonight.
All right, so we have a motion, seconded.
All, this second?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Pump out votes, purchase pumps and yeah, but also what, our own meter.
Yeah.
We should get our own
Flow
meters, flow meters.
Flow meters. And is that, Allison, is that part of the package here?
It's in
Yes.
there.
I didn't see what you sent me, because I just,
There's, in your folder, you have a sheet that looks like this. It's like a Excel spreadsheet. So Rick Audette has sent some basic, very, very rough and dirty estimations. The top line is the nozzles. I was told by Savannah that we definitely need those for this year. We need at least 6. So that number, that 384 number, is one that we definitely need to do.
I'd like to not peck at this as
Okay.
what we need now. I'd
So-
like us to really just look at this comprehensively and
So what do you want to know from me?
not a thing.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought you did. I thought you had a question.
What's precipitating this, guys, is this. We had 2 brand new boats that we've had the luxury of essentially 2 seasons where we haven't really put anything into them in terms of parts, equipment, maintenance and repair. The old pumps that we had from the other boats basically could be used for moorings at this point because they're crap. All right, so what we're looking to do here is to purchase our usual purchase of fittings, hoses, and various supplies. But in addition to that, purchase 2 new pumps, okay? When these pumps have a problem, the simple solution in season is to just trade out the pump. And what we're looking to do, probably the end of this year, whether the pump is working good or not working good, we're going to send it out. If any problems occur with the pumps on either boat during the season, we're going to trade out for one of these new pumps. My goal here is this, is to always have basically 2 pumps in the wings that if we need them, we've got them. Okay, the pumps are not that hard to rebuild, but you know what? Nobody's doing that in season. In this way, you know, when I first got involved with the pump out boats, it was in a circumstance where it was crisis. We had 2 pumps that were worn out, that weren't sucking worth a damn. Okay, we had a bunch of hoses with air leaks in them and stuff. And this coincided, I think it might have been 4th of July or something. It was a nightmare. I don't want to relive that nightmare again. This is totally self-serving on my end. What I would like to do is, we've got a number of about $7 grand here.
Jim, this appears to be for 1 pump. Too.
Okay.
Yep.
So add another 1,000.
I'd like to basically get approval for, I mean, we could do this with what's laid out here because the likelihood of having 2 pumps go down.
Yeah, but the status of the pumps on the boats now,
The pumps are working fine, John.
how new are they or how old are
They're
they?
the same age as the boat.
2
years old. Okay, and that's the deal. We're in that luxury time of, we had 2 brand new setups that we haven't really done any maintenance on yet because we haven't had to. But we're at that point where I think we're gonna see a problem, and I don't wanna wait till we have a problem.
You gotta have at least 1 pump. And I have a question.
Can we send the pump out? If a pump goes down and we replace it.
Can we send it in? Yes, we can. But the reason I had wanted to get 2 pumps was exactly what you just brought up. If we have a pump go down and we send it out, we've taken our spare, we've put it on a boat, and we have no spares. So if the other boat has an issue, it better not happen until we get that pump back. And that's why I thought if we had 2 in reserve, nothing can possibly go wrong. Now, what we are looking for here, guys, is there is the opportunity that we may get reimbursed on these as part of as part of
this equipment.
As part of the equipment. And that's the reason we tried to lump all of this stuff together into one
I
thing.
think
So
you have a better chance of getting a reimbursement if it wasn't a bunch of little.
Do we know
bills.
that, or do we?
Yes, the CVAP grant that I do every year, yeah.
They've been pretty good.
So that would.
But it's a percentage, maybe
We
40%.
do have one,
50%.
the third boat is starting to get a little.
Make a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion.
I have a question first. Where are we gonna store this stuff?
Okay, right now, the stuff has been stuffed in that half-ass shed in the back. You know what these things look really nice as? Sort of conversation pieces in our office.
Put flowers in them, Jim.
I'm serious. I really would think some of these things are better stored inside.
Yeah,
the new ones.
Yeah, no.
Don't they come on a pallet? So we'll have a
Well,
whole
no, you
pallet
pull them off. The pump itself anyways, like 120 pounds or whatever. It's not.
We do, one of the pumps.
I've seen Allison take 2 pumps, one in either hand. It's easier to carry 2 pumps than it is.
True, it hurt your back.
Totally farmer carried them. You got it.
I make a motion, we buy 2 pumps.
Second,
And the hoses.
Thank you.
we'll figure out. I'm gonna put them in the new shed.
Francis had
And
a
the
question.
Yeah.
This is the time to discuss a new shed. If we're putting this stuff in the office, we have to get rid of what's in the office.
I think we should put something suitable.
What are you talking about?
We need,
Our boutique of.
yes.
Stuff.
Yes.
We have the line budget for the shed, we just have to.
Just got a bunch more mugs coming. Yeah.
Have we, do we have plans for the, like how much property we have there? No,
We can't, it can't fit down below. And
Can't
I
fit down below?
think we're gonna probably have to go to ARB
Yeah,
to put it up
there's a
front.
historic
Yeah,
district
it's with a
there.
historic district, right? It comes right in, bites us in the ass.
Yeah,
We could do affordable housing with storage.
You're not allowed to build a second story.
so,
There's no place down below at all.
and lifeguards have taken
Yeah, no.
everything.
They're not getting any smaller either.
Well, yeah, but I mean, could
No
we
room.
talk to them? We
Yeah.
can't
We
say-
could do a satellite office.
Where?
Shellfish.
Right next to the parking lot there.
How big is the basement down there? Your place?
Not that big, no, it's like a crawl space.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I was
museum, right?
thinking,
Put it
we
on
could
our
probably put it in the parking lot down there,
Oh, down at the,
on the outside of the gate.
What if we got a trailer?
There's room behind the shed, they said.
There's like 3 trailers down there now. We should look at a plot there and see what we have.
The wheel bearings, the freaking brakes, the
All right,
oldest.
who wants to walk around
what
down?
about a Can Road? What about a Can Road?
Do we have, is there a,
Like there's Marine patrols there.
Yeah, the only thing is, I don't know. Want to have the stuff?
survey or anything?
I'd almost kind of like
Probably
to have
somewhere.
it where
See, that's what I mean.
Orlean
Is there-
Town
and
probably doesn't have
Allison
it.
can
But I
stick
mean,
their head in there and
Maybe some-
inventory it. You put it down to Gan
Might be
Road, you
some
know, we're gonna
next to it.
find out that we need more hoses. When we're out of hoses.
I just wonder if we could shoehorn it in down
I think we,
down
can
below.
I tell you what, I think we could. I really think we could.
I mean, we can
And-
assert ourselves just as much as they can.
No, they've been really good. They've been really good. I think we could work something out with the life.
Yeah, Johnny Ryan, yeah, you would help.
I'm sure.
They
It
said have
may
Jim
involve
run
some minor
I did.
clearing, which I think they would be very much in favor of, because it's tight, Dan. And what happens is when we get to the beginning of our season, getting our boats out, in the end of the season, it always involves us coordinating a drill of moving stuff around, so everybody,
So it always works out.
because our,
Pumps get heavy usage too, like they're gonna go.
How much are we willing to spend on a shed?
Yeah, $15,000 on one.
We have
Like
options.
Whatever number you come up with, we can find a shed to fit it.
No,
Jim's shed
I
was
tell you what, it's easy,
$5,000.
I tell you what, it's easy enough to go over to the guy in Ridge there.
Caulfield?
Yeah.
Yeah, you ordered, you
They
can
can
put
do
out.
some-
I just got one there. They deliver it for you and
It's
everything.
painless.
It's like four grand or something.
Depends on what you get.
How big is it?
Mine is probably as big as this little setup right here.
They're like 10 by 12. I
15
think
by
they're
10 or
looking at
something.
10 by 14.
Yeah, store all the mugs and all that other stuff in the office. Pumps.
Well, that's not much money. What's that?
No, they're they're pretty reasonable actually, because you know what? You can buy a shed for literally 2/3 of what it costs you to build it.
Yeah. That would now.
I think we should buy it, but I think the more important thing is
Where? Yes, we can
Well,
figure it out.
like Jim said he would walk it with me down there and
Pick a
figure out.
spot and buy a shed.
Let's do it.
You know, put up to 5 or 7 or 10 or whatever the right number is.
Yeah, I'll help move all that stuff out into the shed.
Budget for a shed.
We have, she said 15 grand, we have.
Yeah,
as a line
it
item.
was 6,000 pre-COVID. It was Jim Grimes who recommended the company. It comes fully delivered, fully installed. The company, Caulfield, we ran it through the town.
So it's
They
a
were
line
okay
item
with
in the
it.
budget.
Yeah, we have all that
So let's
research.
execute.
All right. All right. So we done here?
Need to add anything to this? Like, where shed?
I'd like to, if we could, I'd like to make that note 10 grand,
Yeah.
not to exceed 10,000.
I think we have $15,000 from the town in the line budget. Yes.
No, I'm talking
No,
about
the
the
pump out.
Oh, yeah, 15.
Is
That's-
that gonna be enough? You got
No, you might.
Well, yeah, you're at 7 with only one pump, and you got another 4. So that's
7,
11.
maybe you better make it.
And there's
12.
always
Make it 12.
something.
But this number also includes the estimates for the flow meters and the spare kits and the nozzles, just so you know,
Okay,
that's
so
what that number on the
let's
bottom is.
Make it like a comfortable number. You want to go as high as 15? I don't think we need it.
There's
But
always
just so that
something
they
that
don't,
comes.
just so that they don't have to come back to us, because we'll put this in the
We have to
works.
make sure that it's gonna keep rodents out.
The shed, the sheds do
So we're
not
talking
keep
about two
rodents
things.
out.
No. Rodents.
Think about what we're putting in.
If you put things in there, like I would say sweatshirts or things like that, you've got to put them in those like Tupperware containers.
Which is where they are now.
Yeah, otherwise they're gonna get damp and mice and make little holes. So,
Probably not the best place to store clothing anyway.
no.
Well, we have the
Well,
tables.
And the other
tents,
alternative,
lots of-
guys, is maybe this shed is a first step. The other option is to take that room and organize it with some built-in shelving
Second,
and,
yeah.
and storage. Okay, and what you could do is you could basically take the perimeter of the room and make it under counter storage, and the girls would then have, they'd have layout. What's that? Is that a bad thing
Yeah, some principal just got bumped
for saying
in
that?
Massachusetts. Well, he said ladies, not girls. Girls is even worse.
Listen, I didn't refer to it as Native Americans
He's
or
writing
some
over
other things. Hey, Chris, little light on the pen there. What's that?
Please go on. Yeah, the computer was closed.
He was on his way out.
So anyway, I just think it would be helpful to have like basically layout table that runs the perimeter of the room. We have all of these documents, like the stuff that we have accumulated from Orsted and that right now is stuffed all over the place. You know, we've got stuff stacked on top of these file cabinets and that.
Growing
And
out
if
of
we
the
could,
space.
that if we could, well, we haven't necessarily grown out of the space, but we need to organize the space.
Now we're
Now
gonna be
now we have
hiring
the
an
budget
interior
for custom
designer.
cabinets.
Yeah, you have to
Feng shui.
feng shui.
Oh, you know,
Who's on? Yeah, who's on
All
feng
right,
shui?
let's get the shed first and go from there. Yep. All right, is there anything under committee liaisons? I don't see anything. Administrative, payment of bills, Riverhead Building Supply, $888.12 for kayak racks, and Staples, $13.49.
I make a motion to approve the bills.
All in favor?
Have we gotten a bill for labor on those kayak racks?
Not yet, you gotta chase him first.
I have one thing on the report of the clerk. Town has the 350th anniversary coming up. Historic Gulf Society approached us and would like us to meet, as we do tonight, in the meeting house next to Clinton Academy. In the past, they would like once a year dress up and do this non-meeting. But what he wants to do is have the modern board meet in the historic space.
Without the costumes.
Without the costumes. We would have a true meeting, official meeting. Well, you can wear a costume.
There's nobody that says you can't wear a costume. Wait a second, you can dress that way.
No, this would be a regular meeting.
Yeah, we're just having a regular meeting.
We're working with LTV to see how if they can cover it.
Can you
But
fill?
are you guys okay with that?
Sure. When are they thinking to do it?
June, one of the 2 meetings in June.
It's the second one.
Okay, so we'll do it the second one.
Not sure people will make it.
There's also going to be a parade, and there's going to be some event
Historical fair.
over at
Yeah.
Mulford
Well,
Farm.
last weekend and Saturday, yeah.
We've been asked to
What
take
was
part in
that
that also.
anniversary? That was, I don't know, what, 20 years ago?
325.
325.
That was in the
That
80s.
was a big deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, well,
It's
it
gonna
was a
be,
big deal.
it's gonna be kind of like that. They had a fair, it's gonna be like that.
I think, you know what I think would be really cool?
Anybody want to make a motion?
Like, that's the blow.
Okay, so we're all on board with that. You got your heads up. I'll let you know what's happening. Motion to close?
Just want to mention one thing.
Sure.
Quick, a little off topic, but this past weekend, we had the opening of the baseball fields. So I congratulate you.
5-year project that we finally finished and opened up, and 400 or 500 people there. And the kids were running around and having a great time, and everyone's excited. So,
Yeah. Congratulations.
So the season started?
yeah, it was opening day on Saturday. So,
And being a local to see some progression like that was pretty cool.
yeah, if you haven't been through there, take a quick run. It's right by the CBCH.
Yeah, the students who were talking about it today.
Yeah,
They're pumped.
it was great. It was really good. Mr. Howe had his 5th grade band playing.
Yeah,
That was great. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. It's nice to have that finished.
Yeah. Not done yet, but it's cool.
Anybody else?
Close.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, everybody.